All right, and good afternoon. We want to update everyone on what the tropics are doing or might be doing. In these early stages of tropical development are usually the most frustrating. Everybody wants to know what will happen, when will it happen, but there are more questions usually at this early stage than answers. What we're watching is being classified now as Invest 93. Again, not a big surprise, really no big surprises so far. We were expecting a little system that would start to try and get a little bit more organization off the east coast of Florida early in the week. So again, no surprises yet. The expectation is that it will move over Florida and eventually into the Gulf, maybe later on tomorrow night or more so into Wednesday. Now, what we're watching right now is to see what tries to organize, if at all, off the east coast of Florida, because that would then determine exactly where inland it moves. Right now, the Hurricane Center is classifying the center of the invest right about in through here. You'll note the lack of any thunderstorms on the northern and even somewhat on the western side. A lot of thunderstorm activity on the southern side. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch over from our visible satellite, which does show you those low-level clouds trying to get wrapped around. Whether or not there's any kind of closed circulation or not, it's all within the thunderstorm activity, so hard to figure out exactly where that is. So what we can do is kind of go a little bit lower into the atmosphere on radar. Now, this is the radar out of Melbourne, Florida, which they had actually been down, and I'm just now ingesting all of that site data. So that's why you kind of see it go dark there and then start to show up. What this is showing, though, is what almost looks to be a little band of rain on well south of where the Hurricane Center is saying that the center of the invest is. We can switch over to, it's not as detailed, but kind of what we call the NEXRAD, the United States sites of, it kind of takes a conglomeration of all radar sites across the country. So it's not quite as detailed as just the, what we call single site out of Melbourne. And it certainly looks like this may be some kind of little center trying to form. And if that is the case, then this center is way to the south of what the Hurricane Center is right now thinking. Again, these are the early stages, so not locked in on either one of those positions, but it could be a huge factor in what eventually moves into the Gulf, if at all. What we're looking at as well is, again, trying to get that surface validation as to what exactly is going on. And you certainly don't see any of the nearby buoys supporting anywhere close to tropical depression type winds. So thankfully right now, if a low surface center is trying to get organized, the winds are certainly not supportive of anything going on at the moment. So I think the maintaining of a 20% chance within the next 2 days, and again, there is definitely a chance of this organizing off the east coast of Florida. Once it is on land, that is going to limit any kind of real organization until it moves back over the Gulf waters. And we've talked about the temperatures. Believe me, they are plenty warm. It's July. The Gulf is going to be plenty warm to support. And it looks like the upper pattern also supportive of something trying to organize. Right now, again, with more questions and answers, what we do know is that at the moment, this would be a big rainmaker for us. And we could see anywhere from 2 to 5+ inches of rain. Localized amounts are probably even greater. Now that threat starts to approach on Wednesday when we have that marginal risk of some street flooding. Those flood threats, though, do increase for Thursday. We have more so the South Shore down toward the coast and even into the Atchafalaya and parts of Acadiana on Thursday, and then even more widespread for that slight risk on Friday. So this probably gets started on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, maybe even somewhat lingering into Saturday, depending upon exactly where this system goes. So what is going to guide the system eventually to the west? Well, few upper features to note. There's a big upper level low, which the models are not doing a great job of analyzing, and kind of this big upper high that is up to the north. At the moment, there's also kind of an upper level low to the south of this system, which may be causing a little bit of wind shear, although not particularly strong. Now, what we do is we go forward into the forecast, and notice as this is now an invest, there are some models being run on it. So far, we only have one that's called the LGEM. So at the moment, we only have one of the spaghetti plots. You'll see it on a couple of graphics here. As we go forward on into Wednesday, the upper high is still apparent. So if that is the case, this little feature kind of being drawn along the southern end of this high, as well as the northern end of this upper low, kind of squeezed in between, would just keep this system moving to the west. Interesting that the LGEM kind of makes takes a turn into maybe a weakness in the upper high. Whether or not that is in any kind of truth, we'll see. But it does look like the upper pattern would kind of keep this system moving generally to the west, moving it somewhere possibly into Louisiana, possibly even out toward Texas. Again, there's still some uncertainty with the forecast steering, depending upon the strength of this upper high north of it. And it's possible, and there have been a couple of models showing that this little system, if it were to be farther north from where it's organizing right now, kind of keeping it over land and more of just a big messy rainmaker. And then those that keep it down into the Gulf, at least if it's over those warm Gulf waters, it would then have the chance of organizing. So here's what the Euro is thinking. Again, it's also showing up the one of the spaghetti models. This model would have the storm center farther north from where the hurricane center is thinking, and generally moving toward around the Jacksonville area late on Tuesday night. Then as we continue on, notice there is kind of a broad circulation here, but certainly nothing well organized as we're heading into midday on Wednesday. Continuing on into Thursday, again, kind of a broad surface low and a big rainmaker. Not really an organized system per se, and certainly not anything that would be detrimental. And we're talking beyond a tropical storm. That doesn't really look to be on the table right now. Big rainmaker though, and even as that system, what is maybe just an unorganized surface low, moves inland, it still could be drawing moisture up from the Gulf, which would likely keep our rain chances even on the higher side going past Friday and on into the weekend. Maybe not the whole weekend, but maybe Saturday. Here's our precision cast model. Again, this actually has a little bit farther south, but moving toward Jacksonville. So this is our IBM model, the graph model, as well as the Euro, kind of saying the same thing. They both have a different starting point of the storm, but both indicating it moves more toward the northwest, say west-northwest, and more toward Jacksonville. Again, farther north, the better for us, because there is more of a chance that it just stays out over land. Now, this model kind of has it dipping back down south, maybe around Apalachicola, and then continuing beyond Panama City. But again, not a real organized system, just kind of a broad surface low and a big rainmaker. So as it stands right now, this is probably going to be more of a rain issue, possibly. So well, it's meant to have that duck down a little bit, kind of the timing, mid to late in the week for some heavy rainfall. What we could possibly see if it were to organize would then be more of a wind and coastal flooding threat. But the way things stand right now, starting Wednesday, likely through Friday, maybe on into the weekend, several rounds of rain, street flooding possible. The way it's looking at the moment, 2 to 5+ inches looks to be a fair, widespread forecast. Certainly some localized higher totals are possible, but that I think would be a little bit more limited. So what we need to do now is just keep up with the forecast all this week. Over the next couple of days, really going into tomorrow, we'll see if this is able to organize and where inland over Florida it moves. And then after that, we will see if it's able to get into the Gulf. And then after that, whether or not it's able to kind of reorganize over the Gulf waters. Thankfully, it isn't going to have, the way it looks, a lot of time over those very warm Gulf waters. A lot can happen in those brief windows, but it doesn't look like it's going to get just an days on end of being out in the Gulf, maybe a couple of days. So that's why we're going to be watching this more. And then why it is frustrating in these early stages, because to be honest, there's a lot more unknown than knowns. What we're looking at right now, it's going to be more of a rainmaker, but that is very subject to change. So keep up with our TV app, WWL Plus, as well as our phone app, WWL, and we'll always have the updates here on air, on our Facebook, social media accounts. We'll have updates everywhere you are throughout the course of this event. Again, right now, looks like it's kind of a rainmaker Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, but we'll know more the further along into time we get. For now, I'm Chief Meteorologist Chris Franklin.